Twitter at GManJ. With me, as always, is my right-hand man, my partner in crime, the Bert to my Ernie, Mr. Dan Turner. You can find him on Twitter at EagleDanFF. I like that one, don't you, Dan? I saved that one just for you. As I choked up Dan, I'll go ahead and move on to our guest. I've been a big fan of his for years. I'm very honored to have you on the show with us. He's been a veteran of the fantasy industry for years, Mr. Jim Coventry. Thank you for coming on with us tonight.
Excited to work with you guys. I love what you guys are building here. And I just think this is going to be a great opportunity to talk some football with some good friends.
Yes, sir. Is there a little bit of delay for you guys?
No.
Jim got a delay on us. Let's see. Dan, do you have a delay for me?
No, I'm good.
Here, let's see. How about now, Jim? Is that better?
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. I hear no delay.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, you're good. We good?
All right, we're in good shape.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. A little technical difficulties, but it happens. Dan, so since I choked you up, I'll let you go on and tell us a little bit how you doing tonight.
I'm doing all right. I just lost Will Fuller for the season. So after overcoming the loss of Saquon Barkley to make it to number 3 so far in my league, I pretty much have no hope of winning now. So I'm doing great.
Hey, I don't want to hear anything about injuries. I've had the worst luck with injuries this year on my home league, Jim. Dan knows it, but my home league, I won the championship last year. And then this year I had Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Miles Sanders, Michael Thomas, A.J. Brown, Chris Godwin, and George Kittle. Yeah, so
you had the all-IR team.
Yeah, basically, I was expecting to go back-to-back, and that's not going to happen. I'm out of the playoffs. But for those of you who this is your first time tuning in, we want this show to be all about you. We want to answer your questions. So on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we drop a tweet for you to submit questions. If you want your questions to be answered first and a little more in-depth, look for those from the Going for Two Live Twitter account. And we will get to those. And then if you have some, drop them in the chat. That's what we're here for. Feel free to ask as many questions as you want. And we're going to dive right in. We've got some questions already lined up. The first one is from Alex from Twitter, and it's a little bit of a long one, so I broke it down into 3 questions. He asked, since Hopkins has Ramsey, would you start A.J. Brown instead? Would you go Swift over Jacobs? And he could also go Goddard and Hawkinson since it's a tight end premium. So break it down into 3 questions. The first one, would you start DeAndre Hopkins over A.J. Brown? And Jim, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Yeah, I would go with A.J. Brown, and I am not worried about the hip injury they're listing him with. I believe that's a cover. They're giving him rest time every week. The problem I see with Hopkins is that I don't think Kyler Murray's shoulder is just right yet, and I think he's going to have difficulty driving the ball in a tight coverage. So I think the game plan is going to be way different than what we're used to seeing, and they may just use him as more of a decoy. A.J. Brown has a phenomenal matchup this week. I expect him to be fully healthy for this one. Against Cleveland, Denzel Ward is doubtful, and we know Greedy Williams has been out all season. They have struggled against the pass, and their free safety is also injured. We're not sure if he's playing or not. Regardless, A.J. Brown won't need more than 5 or 6 catches to have a very big game here.
And Hopkins or A.J. Brown, who are you going with?
I agree with Jim. I'm going with A.J. Brown. Concern me that Kyler should sit, honestly. His shoulder just doesn't seem right. Ever since he got it hurt, it just doesn't seem like he's completely healthy. And I think with how valuable he is, you should just sit him just for, even if it's just a game. It's not like you're leading the NFC or anything. It's just like you really miss him. I think it's really a detriment to the value of Hopkins. Now, obviously, he's still DeAndre Hopkins, so he's still going to do good. But if he can't get the ball to him, he's not even he can do a lot. And A.J. Brown has just been literally on fire recently. Like, he's destroying teams. So even if Kyler Murray would still be tough, but with a Murray injury, it's clearly A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and I'm with you guys on that one. It's going to be a clean sweep. Hopkins is one of my favorite receivers in the league. I think he's one of the most talented, if not the most talented. But he's been outscored by Kirk Cousins. excuse me, Kirk Cousins. Christian Kirk. Kirk Cousins
Him too.
He's been outscored by Christian Kirk, and AJ Brown's been doing it on limited targets. It's just kind of like with the Eagles not giving the ball to Miles Sanders. I don't understand why the Titans don't give AJ Brown more targets. He scored over double digits in every game except 2. The first one where he got banged up, and then 3 weeks ago where he only had 4 targets. I think AJ Brown's locked in as a wide receiver 1, and the sky's the limit. So for me, that's easy. The way that talent wise, I think Hopkins is a little better, but the situation right now, you got to go AJ Brown. So the second question is, let's see. Would you go Goddard and Hawkinson over either AJ Brown or Deante Johnson, even though it's a tight end premium?
So Deontay Johnson gets double-digit targets in literally every game he plays and finishes. You cannot find that type of volume. So, and I know they're playing the Washington football team that'll put some pressure on Ben without having to blitz. Regardless, the target volume's there. They have 3 really good receivers, so there's no doubling one and saying we're taking him out. So I think you go with that safe floor and know there's a ceiling there as well. So I don't play those Titans over, although I do love Hawkins' matchup, but double-digit targets, we can't look away from that.
Dan, what you think?
Yeah, I'd probably start Hawkinson, but there's no way I'm starting Goddard. I mean, the Eagles are just a complete dumpster fire on offense, and Deontay Johnson is like really, coming into his own as the leading receiver of that team. And it's pretty clear that Juju isn't going to be that guy. So with Deontay stepping up, and AJ Brown that we just talked about, I wouldn't play the two tight ends, and Ertz has recently been reactivated off IR, so that's even worse for Goddard because Ertz is a Carson Wentz magnet. So with that being said, Goddard's going to lose targets as it is, so I would keep him safely stashed on the bench.
Yep, you took it. I was just about to say the same thing with Ertz coming back. Goddard isn't going to have it all to himself. Excuse me, even though Wentz loves the tight end. And I would go with Hawkinson because he's been consistent. He hasn't had that blow up game, but that's the one thing you can say. If you can get 10 points at the tight end position, you are more than happy. And he has done that almost every game this year. I think there's only a few. 3 that he hasn't. 2 of the 3 he had 9.3 and 9.7. That's basically double digits. I still think that the blow-up game's going to come. And, Kenny Galladay's still hurt. Who knows? Even if he plays, he's still dealing with injury. Hawkinson is pretty much locked in. If you have him, I'm starting him every week. And like you said, there's no way I'm going to start Goddard, even in a tight end premium. I'm not going to go with Goddard over Brown or Deontay Johnson. And then the last question he had was, would you go Swift over Jacobs? I think what I was going to say, Jacobs is still hurt, right? I don't think he practiced again today. So even though, so I mean, it's pretty easy for me. I'm going to go Swift.
Isn't Swift still hurt? I thought he was still in.
He returned or he got cleared today.
Did he?
He got cleared. Adrian Peterson said in the last week and a half of practices when Swift was trying to work, they said, Petey's there. Anyway, they said that he didn't have his normal explosiveness, but the fact they cleared him today, maybe that starts to subside, but apparently that's why he wasn't activated last week. This concussion had some kind of an impact on his totality, and so it was very concerning, but as of right now, we really got to watch Friday practice reports. If Swift logs a full practice on Friday, we can assume that he's back to what we expect. And so I think that we start him easily over Jacobs with his ankle injury. And we know Jacobs still has a knee thing going on as well. And you're a running back and those two things are working against you. Yeah, maybe not so much.
Yep. I think you said it all. That's 100%. And we got your guy Marty jumping in too. Friend of the show, Marty. He said, what's up, guys? I need 2 Fitzmagic if he plays Trubisky, Big Ben, or Alex Smith. He lost Drew Brees. I feel like he had to say I lost Drew Brees because you're throwing out the likes of Trubisky and Alex Smith. So I feel bad for you there, Marty. But for me, if Fitzmagic plays, it's got to be Well, Trubisky's got a good matchup too. So for me, I'm going to go with Trubisky and Big Ben. What do you guys think?
So Mitchell Trubisky, I think he's thrown for 3 touchdowns pretty much every time he's played the Lions. The Lions play man-to-man defense. There are no tricks on it, so there's nothing for him to read. Actually, Anthony Miller has gone off in most of the games he's played as well. Trubisky likes the middle of the field against them. So believe it or not, Mitch Trubisky is a good play because he can be functional and well against man defense. Now, the only caveat is, and we're not going to know the answer to this, Detroit fired their coaching staff. If they somehow figure out a way to put a zone defense in 10 or 11 days, that would really make Trubisky a bad play, but I don't think they could change it in 1 week. So I think we're going to be good there. And Ben throws the ball at least 45 times a game. This has become a pass first and pass second team. And but Fitzpatrick does have an amazing matchup. And so that Mitch Trubisky can always turn into Mitch Trubisky. And Fitz against Cincinnati, he's not going to see a pass rush, and he's going to throw the ball to Devontae Parker.
Yep. He threw the ball to 52 last week, finally.
Yes. So I think that's where I hedge it. I think Trubisky has real good upside here, but he's missed Trubisky.
Right. Yep. So, you can see the ugly side too. Just like, and that's what I was saying with Andy Dalton when everybody was so high on Andy Dalton. Yeah, he's got that upside, but he's Andy Dalton. So you can always have that negative game. 140 yards, a few picks, and you wind up with negative points. So, Dan, who are you going with in this group?
I agree with Big Ben. That's the obvious play, but I'm going to go with Fitz, with his magic. I mean, everything you said about Mitch Trubisky is 100% correct, but I cannot, for the life of me, forgive myself if I leave my playoff life in the hands of Mitch Trubisky. I just can't. So, yeah, he could score 3 touchdowns, but he also could throw 5 interceptions, and then you have negative 15 points, and you lose by a point, and then you want to shoot yourself. So, I mean, Fitz has a really good rapport with Devontae Parker, and the matchup is phenomenal because Cincinnati is basically packed in for the rest of the season. They're not going to do anything. So, in that case, I would go with Fitz and Big Ben.
You guys have any concern, though, that Cincinnati's offense can't get anything going? You know, Miami gets up early and they just run the clock and run the ball?
No.
Well, there's a game script for that. And Myles Gaskin may be back. Salvan Ahmed probably backing him up. So there's a world because Cincinnati is not going to be lights out against the run. So and Miami's defense is really going to complicate things for Brandon Allen. So it's a very valid point that I see because Brandon Allen – we kind of know what he is from Denver last year and from last week. Occasionally move the ball, but Brian Flores is going to make him miserable. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, this game could run out early. And if it does, but again, we're going back to the Mitch Trubisky story. Actually, I love his situation. Right. And I'm playing him at DFS.
But it's Mitch Trubisky.
And it's your playoff life on the line.
But it's Mitch Trubisky. So I definitely get with you on that. So hopefully we helped you out there, Marty. We got a question from YouTube from Isaac Wright. What is Joe Mixon's value going forward in the playoffs? So what? This is the second week that he's been on IR, so I think that I can double check on that. You know that off the top of your head, Jim?
They were hoping to get him back for week 15. So regardless of where that sits, they were kind of hoping for week 15. That's kind of what I heard. And so basically, if Mixon is back in and he's cleared to play, then you roll with him. Yeah. Because Joe Mixon, at the end of the day, he's going to get volume. And we know he hasn't always played great in the system, but he's going to be a volume-based play. And if you're in the playoffs at that point, you've got other running backs. So you're not counting on him to be an RB1 for you, whether it's a flex, whether it's an RB2, he will be fine. And so at least if you have him, you'll use him. We just got to see if he gets cleared.
Yep, I think he's in that threshold, especially with the way that the running back position looks this year. If Joe Mixon's active, you're playing him. It's simple as that. Dan, what are your thoughts?
I think that Mixon, depending on how he looks coming back from injury, because the injury he had was to his foot, I believe. So that's really important. If he comes back looking less than 100%, if he comes back with week 15, he has the Steelers waiting for him when he comes back. So it's not like he's going to have a fantastic matchup, even if he is, starting that game. And Isaac's a friend of mine, actually. So I know why he's asking this question. So
that's a lie. You don't have any friends.
That's true. I actually hate him. He's a Cowboy fan. I
didn't do that.
Yeah. But I just wouldn't trust Mixon until we see if he can be okay. Now, the week after 15 and 16 in the championship game, he has a great matchup. But I just don't know how healthy he's going to be when he gets back. And the punishing, if he does come back and it is against Pittsburgh, the punishment he's going to get, how healthy he's going to be the next week.
The Pittsburgh run defense has shown vulnerability over the last month, and they just lost Bud Dupree for extended time period. They gave up 200 yards, not this past game, but they played Baltimore a few weeks back, 200 yards on the ground. They played the Cowboys and gave up over 100 yards on the ground. That defense is showing some vulnerability. It's not quite what it was, and the Dupree injury is significant. And so it may not be quite now. They're playing a JV squad in the recent game against Baltimore, so I can't even look at that. But just understand, defenses are fluid throughout the season, and the Pittsburgh defense was great earlier in the season, and they're still menacing the passer, but the run defense isn't quite what it was.
Yep, and two, with Brandon Allen under center, Joe Mixon comes back. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. Yeah, the defense is going to be able to focus on him, but he should be able to produce on volume alone. We got Mike Hicks, a writer for Going for Two, hopping in asking a question. What do you guys think of QT?
So Kiki Kute at his base is a slot receiver. When they play two receiver sets, I'm very interested to see how they're going to deploy players because he has zero profile as an outside player. If they do, it could be Isaiah Coulter playing on the outside. And so I am concerned about his role. We've seen him have occasional pop-up games, even going back to his rookie season in the playoffs against the Colts, where he went over 100 yards. I do think Jordan Akins, as a tight end, is going to get an expanded role in this offense. They may run more two tight end sets. They may even utilize him in the slot with his athleticism. Kute is going to have his ups and downs, but he should see at least 6 targets a game. So there is definitely value for him in a PPR league for sure. I don't know how much upside is there because, again, I think the team has soured on him over time because they have had opportunities to use him and they have chosen not to.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
I think he's absolutely worth a pickup. Yeah, he is the number 2 in that offense now. And Cooks being the deep threat, he could have a really big PPR day. I mean, he's proven that he can do it. Like, I know that he has been soured and he's been buried on the depth chart with all these receiver signings, and even with Hopkins leaving, they still haven't really found much use for him. But if you give him the opportunity, he has shown that he can produce. So if you're hurting at receiver, or even in need of a flex spot with all these injuries and COVID cases, I mean, there's worse people to take a shot on.
I think if you need somebody who you're going to be guaranteed to get around 5 to 7 points, double digits if you get lucky and get a touchdown, I think he's perfectly fine. I think he's one of those guys that you're not excited to play, but if you're in a dire situation, yeah, he's going to get the looks. He's worth throwing as a flex or something along those lines. But again, I agree with Jim. I don't see the upside with if there's a big play, it's going to be Brandon Cooks or Atkins is going to get a lot of Akins is going to get. I keep calling him Atkins, Dan, every time. Akins is going to get a lot of targets as well. So for me, he's okay. I don't expect anything to go crazy by any means because he's had his chances and he had a few big games here or there. And everybody, go ahead.
One more thing to add, too. Don't be surprised if we don't see some Duke Johnson in the slot. They were working with that in training camp. And if Duke Johnson, they feel at some point, is a better slot option than Kute, he could cut into those snaps. There could be opportunities with David and Duke both on the field. But again, that is something that they could go to. I'm not saying they will, but they did toy with that in the preseason.
And again, that's just one more thing that could take away from his value. So if decent floor, low upside, don't really see a whole lot coming out of it. We got a question from Facebook from Matt Knoll. Is Josh Gordon worth picking up and stashing?
He's not eligible. Week 15 is the earliest he can play. Right. There's a practice window where they can start practicing. Week 15 will be the first time he'd be able to play. Seattle has gone back to their roots of being a run-heavy team. I think the best case scenario for Gordon is not for fantasy managers, for the NFL playoffs. If they could ramp him up into a role, they could utilize him in the playoffs, NFL playoffs, that would be the time. But I don't think in his first game he's going to see any appreciable work. And then, again, week 16, you're going to hang your season on Josh Gordon. Maybe not so much.
Right. Even in the deepest of leagues, week 15, week 16, you're not going to start a guy who's playing his first game where he's going to be, at best, the third option in the receiving game. No, he's not worth anything. Dan?
Is DK Metcalf hurt? Then no.
Don't even put that in the
What are we
middle.
talking about here? Right? I mean, it's Metcalf, Lockett, and then Moore, Swain, whoever, and then it would be Gordon. So there's enough passing attempts to
Not
go around.
including Carson, Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
DJ Dallas has got a little
All
run.
6 tight ends they have, Disley, Hollister. Just
And
no.
honestly, besides a couple big plays here and there, what has Gordon done? Everybody keeps looking back to those, what was it, 2014, 2015, where he had that ridiculous run when he came back from suspension.
I think it was 2012. I think it was 2012.
2012. It was 2012. He's right.
Wow, I feel really old right now.
That's how long ago it was.
So 8 years ago, and that's what he's still living off of. He hasn't been a regular contributor since then. There's no way that you're really going to be willing to put him in your lineup.
There has to be better options available to you than to pick up Josh Gordon. There just has to be, especially the receiver position.
We've got a question from Facebook from John. I have Lamar, but we don't know if he's going to play, so I picked up Tannehill. So let's see. Who do the Titans play this week?
They play Cleveland this week. And, with Denzel Ward out, and like I said, Greedy's been out all season. They have injuries at safety. Ronnie Harrison is out. Ronnie Harrison is a safety. He's on IR, I believe, for them. And so any play action that Tannehill uses in this game is going to have wild success. He could potentially throw 20 passes and put up 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think Tannehill has a great floor. And if for some reason Myles Garrett is back, if some reason they're able to slow Henry a little bit by selling out, Tannehill could go off. I don't think they'll stop Henry, so understand that. But Tannehill's floor is beautiful here.
Yeah, I think Josh Norman knows just about nobody can stop Derrick Henry. So even if Myles Garrett is back, and he's got, I think I would, even the way that Lamar's looked this year, and it hurts me to say because I'm a Lamar Jackson truther. He won me a lot of leagues last year, but you got to go Tannehill even if Lamar Jackson's healthy. He's hasn't had that upside. He hasn't had those big Lamar Jackson games. He hasn't had to the way that the defense is played, and teams are making him throw the ball. He can't throw on the outside. He's missing wide open. I won't call him Hollywood Brown anymore. He's B-movie Brown, but he's missed them. I would go Tannehill, no question, over Lamar Jackson at this point.
Mm-hmm. I'm in that same boat. I have Lamar Jackson. He might not even play, so now I have to decide between Fitzpatrick and Taysom Hill.
Well, in my Superflex league, I'll be going with, I hope Tua plays, but it'll be Tua and Carson Wentz if Lamar can't play. So it'll be not necessarily too pretty. We've got another one from our guy, Marty. Henderson or Akers, who to start? You know what? I would go Akers, even though Henderson I think he got like an extra carry or two if I was looking at it right. Akers still I think he's got the upside, and I think that they're finally going to start to, I could be wrong because Sean McVay says a lot of things, but I think the way he's looked, on 9 carries, he got 84 yards and a touchdown last week. Henderson, I think he got one more carry, and let's see, let me pull it up real quick. 10 carries for 19 yards. So 2 more carries, and he only got 19 yards. So for me, I'm going to go with, if you're looking at these guys, I'm going to go with the upside of Akers.
If those are the only options you have, I would agree with that because Akers' most recent game, the explosive play, and then he scored the red zone touchdown. It's possible the coaching staff leans his way, but it's an ugly timeshare. We need to understand that. And they're facing an Arizona defense that's allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points over the last 5 weeks. Malcolm Brown is still seeing 40% of the snaps. And then Henderson has been, from 33, 46, 32. And then Akers has never seen more than 27% in any of these games. But that said, you're going to hope that those 2 runs parlay into more work for him. But it's a crapshoot, and it's a bad defense to run against.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think in this case, if you're just picking him against both of them, you have to go with the upside of Akers. Like he's shown, scored the past 2 weeks, and TDs are volatile. But hopefully, the kind of performance that he's had, the coaching staff trusts him a little more and stops playing Henderson and even throwing some Malcolm Brown in there and just gives him the bulk of the carries.
Got a question from our guy Iron Eddie from YouTube. Waivers run tonight. Who the higher waiver priority? Frank Gore, who is 180 years old, I believe, or Devontae Booker? Jim, what do you think on that one?
So I'm going to say Frank Gore because he gets touches every week. He has not been bad. If you need him for this week, he's playing against the Raiders, who are not good against the run. On the other hand, for Booker, you're hoping that Jacob sits. But even if he does, the Jets have done one thing decently on defense. They can contain average running backs. If it's a great running back, they certainly struggle, but they do have a decent front seven and ability to slow the run down. And I don't think Booker is the guy who can get to them. So I think Gore would be your play because he's going to get his 15 touches. He could fall in the end zone. I'd go that way.
Dan, what you think?
Yeah, I'm going Gore. For some asinine reason, Adam Gase wants to play 250-year-old petrified running backs. So Gore just honestly, he's just getting the volume. No matter what we say, he gets the volume. He produces decent enough numbers where it's not a Greek tragedy if you start him. So and Booker, you're pretty much just hoping that the starter is out. So in that case, I don't even know who the Jets play, but
the Raiders.
The Raiders.
So the Raiders. So no matter what, Gore's going to get the touches. So you have to go Gore here.
You could have just stopped and said, for some reason, it's asinine Adam Gase and just ended it right there, and it would be good enough. But yeah, I can't believe I'm saying it. It's 2020, and I'm still going to go with Frank Gore as a start. He's got past 3 games, 12 carries, 15 carries, 18 carries, double-digit points the past 2 games. He got a rushing touchdown week 11 against the Chargers. Great matchup, getting the volume. That's pretty much in fantasy this year with the running back position. That's all you can ask for. So it's simply it's pretty easy for me. I'm going to go Frank Gore, and I feel really nauseous for having to say that. But
isn't it funny that in 2020 you see a running back that's getting 18 touches a game and you feel nauseous for playing him?
Yeah, exactly. Our guy Petey wants to know if the Titans DFS stack is a way to go this week. What do you think, Jim?
You certainly can, and it depends how you want to frame this. We know that when 2 teams run the ball, we know Chubb is going to do well. We know Derrick Henry's going to do well. It doesn't always shorten the game with those 2 because their potential for big runs is always there. So it's a weird stack, but there is a scenario. We talked earlier about Tannehill, and if A.J. Brown gets enough targets, you can stack players out of this game. And Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry I'm not even worried about Derrick Henry. Nick Chubb right now is the best running back in the NFL, and there's nobody close. Nick Chubb is crazy good. And I know Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, but both of these running backs in this matchup could do very well. Yes, you can get a high score with a lot of running in this game, and there can be passing success on the Tennessee side.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I completely agree with the call on Nick Chubb. People were saying earlier in the season that Kareem Hunt's a better running back than Nick Chubb. No way. I think Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in the NFL, period. And I'm not a huge DFS guy, so I'm not the one to come for DFS advice. But like you said, you could definitely see a high score out of those guys with A.J. Brown. If they are able to slow down Derrick Henry, like you said, they're going to sling the ball a little bit. Tannehill could be a sneaky play. And our boy Petey said not B-movie Brown, but IFC Brown. I've heard some pretty good ones. Hallmark Brown.
Hulu Brown. Netflix Brown.
Wait, Lifetime.
Yeah, there you go, Lifetime Brown. That's a good one.
There's always a guy that disappoints you in those movies.
Yeah, that's true. Got another question from Matt from Facebook. Mostert, Gibson, or Gallman for flex? Pretty much locked in starting Cook and Eckler. Which, yes, I would definitely play Cook and Eckler over both of those guys. So
I was talking about
for me. You go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was talking about how Pittsburgh has had some chinks in the armor against the run, but I don't think Washington can expose those. I don't think their run blocking is to that level, and Gibson is a real specific type of runner. I don't think he gets to them so well. So I think he does decently, but I don't think he's the guy that has the big game against him. He doesn't have the savvy, I don't think, to like figure the cutbacks that he'll need against them. Mostert I do like in the spot. He did get eased in a bit last week, but Buffalo is not a good run defense. Their pass defense is their bread and butter, and we know that Shanahan system, that is one that stylistically will really take advantage of what that Buffalo front seven does, and I would expect Mostert to have at least one breakaway run with the potential for more in this game.
Dan, who you going with?
I'm also going with Mostert. I was actually talking to Jeff earlier about Mostert and picking him up because he was on waivers in our guillotine league. I know that that people are scared about the plethora of running backs that that San Francisco has, and you have McKinnon there and they're afraid that they're going to take away work. But every time that Mostert is there and he's healthy, he's produced, and he's a favorite of the coaching staff. He's going to get the ball, and Gibson has a really tough matchup, and McKissick is still there to take away some of the PPR upside, and Gallman is Gallman, so I would never pick a Giant for anything. So I think
the Eagles. So what's that say about the Eagles?
We're bad. So I would go Mostert in this case.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. And Gibson, you guys pretty much took everything I said. Gibson is the upside play, I'd say, but with McKissick taking away his targets, that hurts his floor. Gallman, if you need a guaranteed 5 points, then yeah, you got Gallman. But Colt McCoy might have to start this week, so even he's not going to be able to air it out again. And Seattle's defense looked better this week, so easily I think that the call is Mostert as long as he's able to stay healthy. Knock on wood. I think you got to go with him. Marty wants to know: does Chubb and Henry move past Zeke, Barkley, and Kamara next year in drafts? I think it's pretty easily Zeke and Barkley. With Zeke just has not looked himself this year, and Barkley, it's going to be a question mark. He's going to come back. I think he'll eventually be the same, but it's going to take some time. Kamara, on the other hand, it all depends on who's the quarterback. That's a big question mark, but I think those three, Kamara, Chubb, and Henry, are all going to be in the same realm.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. And you're right about the quarterback situation. Drew Brees is one of the greatest screen game quarterbacks of our generation. And that has really fit really well with Alvin Kamara. And we know on the ground, they don't want to overuse him between the tackles. And we've seen since Taysom Hill has taken over, he's seen 3 targets over 2 games. And that's not a recipe for Alvin Kamara's success. He needs to be that. So a great call on that. Completely agree with you.
Dan?
I would go Kamara and those 5, probably Kamara, Henry, Barkley, Zeke, Chubb, in that order.
Wow, you actually said something nice about a Giants fit in the player. That was probably hard for you.
Well, Barkley's a Penn State guy too, so it's an exception.
Okay. I knew there had to be something there. I got a question, another one from Iron Eddie from YouTube. Goddard, if Ertz play or Fance? They said he feels his breakout game is coming.
Don't play Eagles. No Eagles at all.
That's coming from an Eagles fan too, so
save yourself the trouble. Don't play them.
I think the most important thing in that question was if you feel a breakout's coming, trust your gut. That's the most important rule in fantasy. You can ask us all the questions you want, but if your gut tells you something, and to help your point though, at least the Denver's facing a Kansas City defense that's allowed the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends over the last 5 weeks. So they have been hit up by them. So this would be a potentially profitable matchup for Fant because Fant, he seems to be healing up from that injury about now, and Locke will throw him the ball. So, but your gut says that, go with your gut.
I could not agree more. And that's something that a lot of people need to realize. Everybody's just guessing. Some people's guesses are a little more educated than others, but honestly, nobody really has any clue because you can, right process, wrong result happens all the time. You can do the right call. You can look at everything, and it's the NFL, and the craziest thing happens, and that's just the way it is. I would much rather be wrong playing my guy and have a bad game than be wrong playing your guy with my guy going off on the bench, if that made any sense at all. But that's just how I play. I think, you go with, like you said, Jim, you said it perfect. Go with your gut. Dan?
I agree.
You said no Eagles, so
yeah, no, yeah.
There, so.
No, yeah, it's fan.
Got a question from our guy Eric with closing joke. Lentz or Hinton?
It's who gets you less negative points, Eric. People were asking me about Hinton. I actually did a string of posts Saturday night after they said he was a starter. And I said, look, he's not an NFL quarterback. And I know you were joking with your question, so I just want to explain yourself. But when you get a situation like this, and we can start him at wide receiver, dude, he can't play in the NFL. He doesn't know the offense. He doesn't know the receivers. He's playing a championship level defense. I said, hope to get 5 points out of him. And I felt bad about saying that because he didn't even get positive points.
Yeah, it's tough. And, the one thing I will say, I don't think I saw a single person say anything negative about the guy. Everybody realized he was thrown in a no-win situation. He could say, hey, you know what? I started a game in the NFL as a quarterback. Not very many people can say that. So
It completed one pass.
Yep. Hey, that's more than all of us have completed.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
So I got another question from Facebook from John. Pick one: Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, or Michael Pittman. That's a good one. Dan, we'll start with you on this one. Who are you thinking? Cooper, Johnson, Cooks, or Pittman?
Real quick before I get that, Eric is dead to me. Anyway, it's Deontay Johnson. I really like Michael Pittman, but as we talked about before, Johnson is really morphing into the wide receiver one in Pittsburgh. He has a trusted Big Ben. He has a good matchup, so I would go Johnson and not really worry about it this week.
Yeah, it's even with Cooks being the de facto number one now in Houston, you still got to go with Johnson. As much as Pittsburgh's throwing the ball, as long as Johnson's able to stay on the field, he's the number one target in that offense. It's pretty easily Johnson for me.
I'm going to be contrarian here, and I'm going to say Brandon Cooks. Until the last 2 weeks, he was seeing at least 8 targets in every game with Will Fuller. Brandon Cooks is every bit a number one NFL receiver. He's not your prototypical one. He's a different one, but he is a number one NFL receiver. And you're going to hook me up with Deshaun Watson, and I don't worry about Indy's defense. Indy plays a lot of zone, but they run a lot of zone buster routes with Cooks. They've been doing that all season. And, great, maybe to put Xavier Rhodes on him. Rhodes can't run with him. And that's the thing. I think Cooks' speed here, they're going to need to score some points. Their running game is probably not going to have great success. They should get some of these guys back from COVID. They were missing Buckner last week, and they were missing Danica Autry. If they even get some of those back, they're not going to run. And I'm going to bet on the quarterback receiver duo. I like your guys calling Johnson because he has that rock solid floor of double-digit targets, but I think Cooks is going to get 12 to 15 targets as well because they're going to have to throw to him.
It only takes 1 or 2 catches for Cooks to make your day.
Follow up with that, Jim. Aren't you worried that because there's no other legitimate receiving targets in Houston that Indy can just double Cooks and not have to worry about anyone else?
They play zone, so really doubling in a zone, that really is confusing for a defense. That isn't typical. In maybe more man schemes, they would do that. But I think the routes they run with him, they've run a lot of crossers, they've run a lot of dig routes, and these are things that and Cooks' speed presents a really unique challenge. And they're not a very fast secondary as secondaries go, especially the Rhodes idea there. And they're playing with a backup safety from the beginning of the season, and that's the over-the-top guy. So I think the way they use Cooks and double Cooks is beautiful at double moves. And I think that's something that they're really going to start breaking out here because Fuller had been the average depth of target guy where Cooks was running a little more underneath than usual. But they can really expand his route tree, and he clearly can run it because he has. So it's a great question you bring up, but I think schematically, I just don't see that being something that's going to slow Cooks down.
All right.
And our guy Iron Eddie on YouTube said that one pass that he completed went to Fant, so he's got 100% of the completions. And he said, "I appreciate the compliment, Eddie." He said, "You're doing a great job." So that's a good point. And then Matt from Facebook also, it's not a question, but Jim will make sure since he's asking. He said he enjoys your energy and your insight, and he wants to know where he can find you. So we'll definitely throw that at the end of the show too. But go ahead and while we're here, go ahead and tell them where we can find you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. The main place you could find me, if you have SiriusXM, I am on the SiriusXM RotoWire show every Friday from noon to 2 Eastern and every Saturday from 1 to 3 Eastern and on demand on the app. And then when the NFL season ends, then I'm a ghost. I only work during the NFL season. But if otherwise, the other place you can find me on my Twitter feed at Jim Coventry NFL. I will do a 75-minute live stream before the kickoffs on the main slate on Sunday. And I'm always glad to answer questions interactively. Preseason to do a lot of streams, but that's basically where you could find me.
There you go. And Marty was asking the 3 passes, 2 interceptions. I think it was just 1, right? You only had 1 completion?
Yeah, just the 1.
Oh, 2 interceptions.
Right. Yeah.
Over my head.
It was a great question, Marty.
Marty's our guy. We love him here. So that's we do have one more question that was submitted earlier. would you sit Boyd based off what the connection looked like with Allen last week? Jim, what are your thoughts? Would you sit Boyd?
So here's what I noticed last year. Brandon Allen played 3 games at Denver. He pretty much locked on Courtland Sutton and Noah Fant. Not like he had a ton of options, but he really locked on an alpha and he locked on a tight end. Well, last week, that actually logic applied. He went to Drew Sample 5 times target-wise, and he was successful with Sample. And then he also targeted T. Higgins. Now, Boyd saw 1 extra target, but the leverage targets were going to Higgins. So I think that Boyd connection that he counts on from the slot, I don't think that's where Brandon Allen's going to go a lot. And we're not even looking at him throwing like 200 yards in a game for the most part. He got there last year once, but he's probably going to be like a 180-yard guy. And so I think we're going to just go Higgins if possible, but downgrade him to a wide receiver 3 flex. He's not your wide receiver 2 like he had been. And I still think Sample is going to see some targets just based on the little bit we saw from Brandon Allen.
Yep, and that was my thoughts exactly when everybody was saying, "Oh, it's doom and gloom for every bit of the Bengals offense." But like, if he's locked in on a couple guys, they can still have value based on volume, and that's simply it. So it's looking like Higgins and Sample, and that's pretty much it. So it sucks too because when he went down, Boyd I think was being severely disrespected. He was having a great season. He was always that borderline wide receiver 1. He still had some blow up games, but the way that Burrow went down, unfortunately, is just tanking this offense. So, Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna sit him. I think that there just isn't enough targets to go around, and T. Higgins looks like he's usurped him into that top spot for now, with Allen there. And I like the point you made, Jay, that Tyler Boyd is the annual winner of the Robert Woods Award of being underrated. So,
yeah,
but with Joe Burrow being hurt, I just don't think there is enough in that offense to give points to 2 receivers and a tight end. So I would go with the one that seems to be getting more of the quality targets in Higgins.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a pretty interesting question. I like what you're thinking, Eric. Wants us to play a little name game with Taysom Hill. Where's the line that you're starting him? So I just pulled up the high scores according to Yahoo. Obviously not Mahomes, Wilson, Murray, Rodgers, Watson, Allen, Brady, Herbert, Tannehill, Big Ben, but Kirk Cousins. So I'll start here. Jim, Kirk Cousins or Taysom Hill?
I'm going to say Kirk Cousins. And I know you're going to ask, but I'm going to qualify this real quick. They're playing Atlanta for the second time in 3 weeks. Atlanta's seen him now. That worries me, a divisional matchup the second time. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, and the thing, too, is people, you see all over Twitter, who said Taysom Hill can't be a quarterback? Well, those people who are saying that are looking at the fantasy points and not watching the game because Taysom Hill has not looked good. He's gotten the rushing touchdowns, and that's pretty much it. He hasn't been able to complete great passes. He has not looked good whatsoever. So I still think that Jameis is going to wind up under center sooner rather than later. But Dan, what do you think? So what do you think, Cousins or Taysom Hill?
I'm going to go Taysom Hill. I know that Atlanta I've seen him before, and he hasn't looked good as a quarterback, but rushing touchdowns still count in fantasy. So, and it's not like he's going to give Kamara all those goal line touches because he's taking them for himself. And I just can't. I mean, Kirk Cousins does a great job. I just can't trust Kirk Cousins for some reason.
I'm going to go with
I would go with him. Yeah, the ones you named over Hill.
Yeah, so I'm going to name just a few more. Lamar Jackson. I'm just looking at average points. Lamar Jackson or Taysom Hill?
I'm going to say Taysom there. I don't trust Lamar Jackson at all anymore.
I would go Lamar just because he's facing Dallas, and Dallas defense sucks.
That's the only thing. If it was just about anybody else, I would go. And you know what? As much as I hate to say it, I wouldn't blame anybody for going Hill over Lamar. But I still, maybe it's how much I love Lamar. I still think the blow-up game is coming eventually, and it could happen against Dallas. So
I think Dallas is the perfect matchup for Lamar to finally connect with Hollywood because Dallas, whatever. The Dallas secondary is not great. They're not instinctive, and they're not fast. So if there's ever a game for Brown to break out, it has to be this one, in my opinion.
Now, dumb question here. I don't even know. Was Jackson just on the COVID list, or did he actually have COVID? Do we know that?
He tested positive for COVID.
He had COVID. Yeah.
But they said with getting pushed back to Tuesday that he will have enough time to potentially be back this week.
Okay.
Well, it helps that they delayed the Ravens game for 16 years.
Absolutely.
This week's not going to happen until January. But
it counted for week 12 of the 2025 season. That's how long we waited.
So the next few guys, I would definitely start Taysom Hill over, and I'll see if you guys disagree. Matt Ryan versus New Orleans, Carson Wentz versus Green Bay, Matthew Stafford versus Chicago. I would go Taysom Hill all three of those guys.
Yeah.
For me, the Cousins, Lamar Jackson, that's where it's kind of a little wonky.
So we're putting Hill right around like the 11, 12, 13 rank of quarterbacks.
And then Iron Eddie had a same idea as Taysom. Where do you start guys over Zeke this week in half PPR? That is going to be a tough one, but I'll pull up all the running backs. Let's see.
While you're pulling that up, Dallas is going to their left tackle is doubtful. Zach Martin is listed as out already. And so they're going in with a bad line that's even worse. So they have like nobody to block. So but while you're looking at it, I just want to throw that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Zeke he doesn't look interested. Like and you really can't blame him. They're not going anywhere, but he just does not look like the Zeke of old. I'm going to skip the Cooks and the Henrys that obviously you're starting them over. So let's look down a little more. Mostert
easily there.
Mostert,
yeah, me too. David Montgomery versus Detroit.
Montgomery.
Yeah, as much as that hurts to say, I think I'm going to go him too. Kareem Hunt versus Tennessee. I'd go Hunt again.
Hunt, yes.
Todd Gurley versus New Orleans.
I'd go Zeke there.
Yeah,
I'd go Gurley.
Gurley is touchdown or bust. If you get a touchdown out of him, you're happy. If not, you're getting 30 yards. So
and they're playing New Orleans, and his knee is an issue.
Yeah.
He might not even play. It could be Ito Smith. And if Ito Smith starts, then I'm taking him over Zeke.
Ito Smith, I like it. I like it, Dan.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ito Smith or Zeke if Gurley's out.
Ito Smith.
Ito Smith. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Ito Smith.
He'll get 5 catches.
2020, you're recommending starting Frank Gore and Ito Smith. How's that feel?
No one wants to say this, but Zeke looks like he's running out of gas now. I mean, he's gotten so many carries over the past couple of years. He's basically carried that offense for so long. I mean, it's getting to the point that Tony Pollard looks more explosive than he does. He just isn't the same person, and no one wants to, say that. But you just can't trust him to put up those consistent running back one numbers anymore, especially with Dak being out. It's not like people have to be like horrified about Andy Dalton blowing them away in the passing game. So I think that Zeke is quickly going to fall off a cliff pretty soon.
And this is just completely, I have no proof of this whatsoever. It's just something that's been on my mind, the way that Zeke's looked. A lot of people have lingering complications from COVID. So I wonder if that has something to do with it, that he's just not 100% healthy. Even though he had COVID a few months ago, they're saying that some people, it lingers for months, had it in March and still dealing with complications from it. So like I said, I've gotten no proof of that whatsoever, but that's just something that has crossed my mind. We got Iron Eddie again. Oh, no, we already did that one. So let's hop to Marty. You need 2 Perryman, Crowder, and Kirk. I'm going to go Perryman and Kirk because
that's Christian Kirk, by the way, not Kirk Cousins.
I thought it was Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry.
Just in case we got mixed up again.
I'm going to go with Perryman and Kirk because Crowder started the season on fire, but since Mims has been back, Crowder hasn't done much of anything. So give me the big playability of Perryman, and Kirk has looked great.
Kirk did look great for a while, but since Kyler hurt his shoulder in that game and the game since, he can't get the ball downfield. And a little hidden secret is that, Jalen Ramsey's on one side. They've gotten great cornerback play from both sides, and they're getting a lot of pressure. So if Kyler's under pressure, the cornerback play is great. I think Christian Kirk was counting, as he did in many of these games where he went off, on bad second corners where Hopkins was drawing the coverage and Murray's arm was fine. So you're right. Kirk would be the better play. I think given the current circumstances in the matchup, I don't like Crowder, but I think Crowder may be a better floor play than Kirk right now.
That makes complete sense. Dan, what are your thoughts?
I can't justify playing 2 New York Jets.
You're right. Didn't even think about it that way.
No. it's Perriman and Kirk for me.
Okay.
You made all good points about the injury and everything in Arizona to Kyler Murray, Jim. But I just think that they can scheme ways to get Kirk open. Just run some slants. Don't overexert his arm if it's really that hurt. I can't justify ever playing two New York Jets, much less one most of the time. So
go to the waiver wire. That's the answer.
There you go.
I'm available on the waiver wire, Marty.
Pick up Ito Smith.
Yeah.
We're hitting.
Well, I'm going to skip a little bit since we had so many questions, which we love. That's exactly what we want the show to be. So thank you, guys. I'm going to jump to the last question, or the second to last question on our list. Do you trust Kenyon Drake as a running back too? And with this one, Jim, we're going to start with you. And I'll give you a second question. Good.
Yes. So Kenyon Drake, it gets about half of the work. He has seen a little bit of an uptick in targets. Earlier in the season, it was 0, 1, or 2, but he's been seeing close to 5 targets in recent games. So he's getting volume. And so I say, okay, volume is volume. And a running back too, that's not a high bar to cross. With all the injured running backs, if you're going to get me 8 to 10 points, guess what? You're a running back too. So yes, Drake fits that bill.
Yep, and that's exactly right before we came on. I was, doing a little research for this question. And Michael F. Florio from the NFL Network, he was a friend of mine, guest that came on a few weeks ago. He tweeted exactly out what you said. Weeks 1 through 10 combined, he had 11 targets, 8 catches, and 38 receiving yards. The past 2 weeks, he had 9 targets, 7 catches, and 46 yards. So he's already just the past 2 weeks. And that's what everybody loved about him last year. He was not only getting the carries, he was also getting the targets, and that's why he was so productive at the end of last year. The beginning of this year, Edmonds was more involved in the passing game, and he lost that floor that he got from catching the ball. So the way the running back position looks this year, you're getting, like you said, you're getting volume, you're getting looks easily. I'm trotting out Kenyon Drake every week as a running back too. And, with Kyler dealing with the injury, he's a lot less likely to try to tuck and run and take those big hits on the goal line. So he's actually getting some goal line work as well. He's got 3 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. I think Kenyon Drake is a guy that could turn it on at the end of the season. Dan,
I think that Kenyon Drake has the potential to be a running back too. Is the question for like this week or the rest of the season?
Rest of the season.
Okay. The rest of the season, then yeah, I would. I read the question as just this week. This week I wouldn't do him as a running back too. But for the rest of the season, yeah, I mean Chase Edmonds is still there and he's still splitting the work. I think he has the potential to be a running back too. It's hard for me to trust that because there's always that game or two where Edmonds just completely explodes and Kenyon Drake gets 6 points and then you're screwed. I mean, he's doing good the past couple of weeks, and he seems to be consistent workload. And with the Murray injury, they should see more. The running back should see more work. Both of them should see more work. So in that respect, the rest of the season, he should be in the running back 2 conversation. I just don't like him this week.
Well, and 2, and one of the reasons that I like him the rest of the season, if this continues, since he's came back from injury, he's outrushed Edmonds 49-16. Over the past few games. So that's a pretty significant margin. So they definitely want him to carry the ball more. Let's see. We got another question from Iron Eddie. He said, Jim, you always say Duke is bad at football. Can it really be decent at a slot wide receiver?
Compared to what they have? Maybe so. Everything is relative, Eddie. So yes, I mean, and maybe all along it's possible. Duke Johnson, when I say not good at football, is position a running back. It's possible that he could be a good slot receiver. It's such a different animal, and I don't know if he will or won't be. But he's not a good running back. We've learned that, right? But so I love your question, Eddie. I think it's a great one.
Jeff Lambert, who's the head of the site, has kept saying, finally, maybe the Duke Johnson truthers, now that he's finally gotten his opportunity, will maybe just finally admit that he's not a good running back because he's got the chance. He's done nothing. But if you're Duke truthers still, probably not going to give up. So Matt from Facebook wants to know if we should be worried about Aaron Jones' usage in Green Bay. I did fade. This was one of my big misses this year. I did fade Aaron Jones this year, and that's because last year it was a 50-50 split, and then they spend the pick on A.J. Dillon. So it wasn't about his talent because he's shown he's one of the best running backs in the league, but me personally, I was concerned about what's happened recently, that this backfield was going to be more of a committee. I still think he has the talent. And again, like we've said a few times tonight, the way running back looks, you're starting Aaron Jones, period. He's got the talent. Even though they're not running the ball in the red zone, they're throwing in the red zone, and Aaron Jones has been getting plenty of targets in the red zone as well. So while you do have to be a little concerned that Jawal Williams is getting more work, he's Aaron Jones, you're playing him.
Yes, the usage does concern me. Earlier in the season, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
He was getting 60% of the snaps as early as 3 weeks ago. In the last 2 weeks, 50% and 52%. So that is troubling. And he only had one really big game this year. It was the game against Detroit, like in week 2. But he has not been a great fantasy running back. Like you said, though, Jay, you're using him. You can't bench him. Right. But he's not the player we hoped he would be when we saw him, especially last season in the playoffs, week 2 this year. We're not getting that guy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like I said, that's the reason, I looked like a fool at the beginning of the year, the way he started off so hot. But that's what concerned me. And that's simply Jamal Williams. They haven't really got A.J. Dillon involved at all. So I don't know if they're just not willing. I would have thought if they're looking, he's a free agent after this year. So I thought the way that it looked, maybe, okay, they're going to ride him in the ground and let him move on. But I don't know if that's the case, that they're looking to re-sign him and they're trying to not put as many miles on his legs. I'm not sure. But like you said, it definitely is concerning. So we are going to hop on to our Call Your Shot, where if this is the first time you're tuning in, although we let's see, sorry about that. We're going to do Call Your Shot. It's basically a bold prediction where Dan and I are doing a competition where it looks like Dan's going to win, unfortunately, but I'm still not giving up. It's a bold call, and if Dan wins, which it looks like that's going to be the case, he is going to choose my Twitter avatar for the entirety of the NFL playoffs. So I'm probably going to, if you see me with a J-Jaw Twitter avatar, that's why. So we're going to run through this quick. We're running close to an hour. Jim, what is your bold call for this week?
So I think that Mitch Trubisky throws for, I'm going to say 3 touchdowns, and Anthony Miller goes for at least 75 and a touchdown.
Okay, Dan, what you think?
I see Michael Pittman going over 100 yards against the Houston Texans.
Okay, and that's a pretty good one. I'm going to go with Jarvis Landry. Going to get back-to-back 20-point games, even though he's looked pretty terrible this season. I think last week was his first game over 60 yards, I believe, and I just think he's going to keep it going. Well, Jim, we really appreciate you coming on with us tonight. We do have a few little housekeeping things that we have to wrap up. First thing is we always ask whoever is our guest to come with an interesting fact with themselves about that the fantasy football community does not know. So the floor is yours. What's something that we may not know about you?
I never check my fantasy results until the games are completely over.
Wow.
And
I don't know how to do that. I'm sure you enjoy it a lot more, but I couldn't do it. There's no way.
The worst thing about fantasy football is that when somebody says, oh, well, so-and-so lost me that game on Monday night. No, he didn't. You were playing 9-on-9 or 12-on-12. Your game was lost at either noon or 12:15 or whenever it was. It wasn't that last player in that last game. I hate that. And so by looking at the final score, none of that means anything to me. I also have too many teams. If I'm rooting for, let's say, Brandon Ayuk, well, he might be against me. I don't even look at who my opponents have in their lineup, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I don't care who's on their team. I'm going to play my team, and that's it.
That's impressive. I couldn't do it. I hate that one. Like, I've got Brandon Cooks in this league, but I'm going against him in this league. How am I supposed to feel about what's happening right now? So I definitely get that 100%.
It sounds like a much more emotionally and mentally healthy way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because when I'm in a bad mood, when I'm not having a good week, I get in trouble with my wife. It's just fantasy football. It doesn't matter. I'm still upset, but that's here nor there. And then the last question that we have that we ask every guest, and Jim, as we were talking before the show started, I think once everybody realizes why, we're going to know that this was a very easy question for you. Dan and I both agree that Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. It is one of the greatest sports debates. Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who is the GOAT?
Michael Jordan. And I'll just make one point. Once he got over the hump and won a championship, aside from coming back from the retirement, not being in shape, he never lost a playoff series again. His will to win was indomitable, and nobody had that level of intensity.
Could not agree more. So now we've told the guys who voted LeBron they're not welcome back on the show. So, Jim, that means you are welcome to come back anytime. We thank you again for coming on tonight. If you want, real quick, just tell everybody where they can find you.
Thank you. You can find me at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. Also, you can find me on SiriusXM. Again, it's the RotoWire show on Fridays and Saturdays. It's noon to 2 Eastern on Fridays and 1 to 3 Eastern on Saturdays. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Dan, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at EagleDanFF. I also write a weekly column for Going for Two, rookies that will win you the week, which is getting narrower and narrower because they all seem to keep getting hurt.
You can find me on Twitter at GManJ. I write a weekly column for both Going for Two and Sleeper Wire. We will be back next week at 7 p.m. We're having the great Linda Lyons. If you don't follow her on Twitter, she's absolutely hilarious, and we're really excited to have her on next week with us. 7 p.m., same time, same place. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week.